The top sirloin butt is a great cut. It's got a lot of versatility. However, if you cook it as a whole piece, you are going to find it to have a lot of tough muscles. But if we break this cut apart into the main 3 pieces, you are going to be so happy with how this performs on a plate.
We have 3 main muscles in this piece. The first one is what we know as the top sirloin cap, which is right here. It's also known as picanha, very famous in Brazil. The second muscle is the heart of it, which is the center. And then finally, we've got this kind of a strange muscle that is called the mouse because of its shape. So you can find this muscle very easily because it's just precisely on the opposite side of the fat of the piece. So I'm going to start by cleaning this up and removing all the connective tissue that we don't really need. And from there, I'm going to start separating each one of the muscles.
So by trimming some of the fat, what you find is the roadmap for how we're going to reach all of this mouse part muscle. It's much clearer once you've taken a lot of the fat away from the cut. So we're digging down deep to find where this mouse muscle is, following that natural seam and just pulling it apart and getting all of that variation on tenderness out of there. So we're separating clearly the picanha, the culotte, the cap, whatever muscle you want to call that, from that center cut top sirloin. And there's just a really natural seam that goes through here that you just find and just peel that cut right off. The fat can also be used to oil your grill. Oh, yeah. So why bother with spending additional money on vegetable oil or whatever when you can just use the fat from your beef as your grill oil or your pan oil. So what we have here is the center cut top sirloin. And this is decision making time. Do you need a whole roast to cook? Or do you need maybe a smaller roast and another bigger roast? But can you see there is a natural seam that goes right down about 1/3 the way. And we just broke right through that natural seam. And this makes a fantastic chateau top sirloin. And now we have what we would call a 1/3, 2/3 cut. So do we want to keep that as a roast, or do we want to steak everything? Beautiful. And look at the shape of that. Immediately, what do you think of? Tenderloin. So quite a few menus will say filet of top sirloin on the menu because it looks like that shape. It is very versatile. It can be thick cut, it can be thin cut. It would make a fantastic surf and turf instead of the much more expensive filet mignon. And now we have another roast. We have 2/3 of that whole top sirloin. So do we want to leave it as it is? You could tie it, or we can make the same steaks and cut it in half and cut them, or we can make bigger steaks. And now I want to show you the real secret to making sure that every single steak eats perfectly. If you notice this little piece right here, that will give you tremendous variation in tenderness. So you need to go ahead and cut that out. It is just that one cut, but if you'll remove it, it'll make such a better eating steak.
Once you have finished cutting the steaks, you have to make sure you remove every leftover of connective tissue that would affect the quality and tenderness of your piece. In this case, for example, we can appreciate it here, so we just have to remove that part. This is the picanha, or this is the top sirloin cap, as you wish to call it. But look at this, there is this part of meat and then we have the fat. we just need to follow where the fat goes so that we can easily remove that. Like here we can just go right through and then just remove this part of fat very easily. Now we turn it around and we will just do the same, just follow where the seam goes right here so we can get rid of all this fat. It shouldn't take us that long, it should be rather easy. And then we just remove some of the connective tissue that is left.
We have this nice cleaned piece of cap meat or culotte or picanha. Decision making time. Are we going to roast it whole, kind of Brazilian style? Or are we going to cut it into top sirloin culotte or top sirloin picanha steaks? What would you like to do, chef?
I would think we should get some steaks out of this. Okay. Beautiful, thick, but you have to remember that we always have to go against the grain. So we shouldn't cut like this, it should be cut this way.
Perfect. What you really notice is when you cut this, it looks like a New York strip. It has a lot of the same orientation, and trust me, it will eat as good as a New York strip or even better. So it's a lovely cut, a real sleeper that, like we said, much of the rest of the world discovered before we discovered it in the Caribbean.